Kate Milafalcho, welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome back, Micah of I'm Curious About George.
Thank
I'm
you.
still curious.
I'm still curious too.
Wonderful podcast. I'm so happy to have you back.
Thank
You
you.
have made 4 podcasts
I'm
now.
I'm about to release 5. I'm
Now
editing it
stop.
right
I'm
now.
halfway through number 4.
Oh.
They are short. They are relatively short. So
Yeah.
they're not.
5's going to be a little bit longer, actually.
Well, I have a favorite, and we'll get to it. But how's it going? How's the dig?
Oh my God. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, it's a little bitty podcast at this point, but I do feel that it's going to gain momentum as I build up the library of episodes. And it's just, it's a story that writes itself. It's something I can't control. It's my reality. And as I've delved like deeper and deeper, it's getting really weird in some ways.
No, I actually wanted to know when I said how's it going. I actually want to know how the archaeological dig is going, because that is just fascinating. So anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, go back and watch the episode that I did, or listen to your episode 1. We won't, reiterate old stuff. I want to know what you found since we talked. What was the most momentous thing you found so far?
What I've been finding out is more information in a way. And that is, so in episodes, I think 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, I wrote it down. I made notes.
2 you did archaeology and 3 you did library.
Yeah. So in 3 and 4, I really kind of break down the library. And, the library I broke it down into, in episode 3, I talk about like how a lot of the books almost seem to predict our current political situation. And it talked about, like the symbolism even in the architecture of Washington, D.C., and the people that built and designed some of those buildings, about all the books on ritualistic magic that George had. And there's a book that George had, and The End of America by Naomi Wolf.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. And, there's so much there. There's so much richness there of, George died in, I think it was like maybe 2018. I'd have to look that up. But so he was around for the first Trump presidency, but he was probably sick for a part of that because he had cancer. And so many of these books, to me, are so focused on what's happening right now, on how, the far right has sort of created a template for our future government, and that's sort of what we're becoming. And I was shocked to read some of these books. And then on episode 4, I go more into a lot of the psychic phenomena that there's tons of books about psychic phenomena and mediumship and remote viewing and, all sorts of things like that. And I'm actually leaving UFOs because I have a whole bunch of books on UFOs.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm pushing.
Go ahead.
And I'm pushing that back because those are at least 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah,
the UFO, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I wanted to mention something. Now, you did an episode, and I was so shocked because I thought it was like I just thought that I didn't know anybody else had read this book, but it's amazing. Is the Skinwalker, the Skinwalkers of the Pentagon? Is that the name of the book?
Yeah.
Such an interesting book. And one of the one of the stories in that book was about a property that's close to where I live. And it's where they said that there was like some kind of a vortex or a portal, and people were describing weird activity, almost Skinwalker Ranch-ish esque. And so the US government that had this kind of, hidden force that was investigating paranormal things
Yeah,
and
with Robert
UFO.
Bigelow. Yeah.
Right, Robert Bigelow. They had filmed at that property and indeed filmed all sorts of weird things coming out of the ground, kind of like Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, I would
And
advise people who are interested in this, if I can just, while I'm thinking,
yeah, please.
don't watch Skinwalker Ranch, the TV
Yeah.
show. That's just Hollywood. Watch my videos on the books,
Yeah.
because I covered both books. That the Pentagon book is the sequel to the first book, and Hidden Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, something like that. And it doesn't just talk about Skinwalker. It talks about Dulce. It talks about several places in New Mexico.
Right.
Yeah, it's really odd. And I aggressively ignored Skinwalker for decades. I heard about it, and I just, for some reason, and stumbled on those books when I was really I needed something to cover that was lighter, I thought. So yeah, they're really good books.
I saw George Knapp speak and talk about Skinwalker Ranch. And one of the things that they discussed was the hitchhiker's effect, which is that when you have some of these paranormal experiences, and people also, like in the UFO community, have had that. And, I think to some extent, like mediumship experiences and being around a lot of that, there is this hitchhiker's effect. And when I heard that about Skinwalker's Ranch, I was thinking, I won't even drive within 25 miles of that place. It sounded that sounds very terrifying to me.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
A lot of people ask me when I describe some of what's happening in my house if I'm terrified, and I'm not, because this is not, it's not a ghost story. It's not a cliche paranormal storytelling. It's not that. It's a story that's more of a legacy that does suddenly shift into this paranormal experience that's not entirely named or given a category. It's just laid out there in front of you like a banquet, and you can do with it what you'd like, and I, sometimes I conject about what it might be. But the interesting thing about that book, that was where they talked about the property, I think it was close to Somis. So it was like south of here, is that I talked to this guy. I found these business cards in one of his cabinets. And there were hundreds and hundreds of business cards. I went through every one of them. I don't know what compelled me to do that, but I found this card and I called this guy, and it turned out he was a good friend of George's, and he had gone on like sweats with him in like Native American lodges, and they had done all sorts of, unique spiritual male bonding kind of stuff together. And George was convinced that there was a portal or a vortex on this property. And when I first heard that, I was like, I don't know exactly what that means per se, but you hear a lot of people mention that about Ojai, that there's a vortex here. And I don't know. I think that's a very maybe vague terminology, although I know there's like magnetic lines. There are like magnetic areas that literally have like a magnetic
ley
line.
ley lines.
Ley lines.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was surprised to hear this gentleman tell me that. And then I said to him, let me guess where it is. And I guessed exactly where it was, where George thought this portal was. And that kind of actually freaked me out a little bit. And this man said that George had also had these two, what he described as Native American intuitives, read the property and also state that there was like something in this spot on the property. And not that I've seen like weird things coming out of the ground, but it just sort of keeps adding layers of mystery that I'm trying to explore. What is this all about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the it occurred to me to maybe put up some cameras at night that are, infrared. I don't know. I'm not convinced that there's activity like that, but I do feel like I was called to this property, and I do feel that I am supposed to be a narrator of this experience. Like
Yeah.
I do feel that I was given this responsibility. And it's really interesting on episode 5 that I am editing right now. A friend of mine who is a therapist, he's a very pragmatic person. He was here with his partner visiting, and he had a paranormal experience while he was here. And I think initially he wasn't sure how he felt about talking about it. And then he just decided, you know what? I feel as if he said that he felt when it happened that he was supposed to be a trusted narrator, like given that responsibility to tell this story about an experience he had. And I was like, Ray, I felt the same way. I feel like in moving here that it's not only about, George who's passed. And, sometimes I have a little bit of fun with it because it's so interesting. I feel like a little kid going through like a treasure box. But I also feel like I've been given this responsibility and that I have to tell a story, and it's bigger than George and it's bigger than me. And it's also my life. It's not only about George, it's about me and how I respond. And it's about somehow I'm getting mirrored in here and I don't know why. Somehow George is creating a mirror for me to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm having unusual experiences. So George was reading all these books about psychic experiences, and now
Well,
I'm having interesting experiences.
so I have this couple of pages of questions, right?
Oh,
And we might
okay.
get to some of them. Who knows?
Yeah,
But at
I
the
want to
very,
hear 'em.
very end, you said something, I don't really remember what, about synchronicity. And it got me thinking, it depends how you look at this, depends on your worldview.
Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
can look at it in a variety of different ways. So just before we talk about that, the chapters in the Skinwalker books that were explicit about, I didn't cover them. I said, okay, you want to know about them? Read them yourself. I'm not inviting anything home with me. So go right ahead and read.
Right,
So
right.
on one level, I take this very seriously. So other than that, I believe very much in synchronicity, as Carl Jung type. He
Mhm.
talked a lot about that, right? And if you have this frame of reference, and I'm not insisting that everybody believes this,
Yeah.
then you might choose to believe that souls seek each other out to help each other through this incarnation, the
Mhm.
experience that you have a connection, and you meet the people you meet because you're supposed to meet them, and you interact with them in whatever way because there's some sort of evolutionary lesson there for you. And I think that's why you reached out to me,
Yeah.
not because of me, but because here's a little opportunity to get the information out a little more and maybe reassure you that what you're experience no, really what you're
Yeah.
experiencing is not, it's unusual, but
Mhm.
it's not threatening, it's not
Yeah.
scary. And you're
Mhm.
contacting the energy of a man who's trying very hard to be in contact with you. It's fabulous. I
Yeah.
think it's really wonderful. And I wonder how you feel about your relationship with the spirit energy of the man called George.
Um, yeah, there's so many questions in that question, and I just want to mention one thing about synchronicity that is sort of mind blowing. So George had a painting here that was still kind of wrapped up, and it was a huge painting. And it was, I call it the psychedelic rhino. It was like a rhino just like pushing out of a painting. It was huge. And it just, there was no art in here. So it seemed, and he had these oracle decks. And so like this, this rhino, this huge rhino seemed almost like this oracle painting. And I was always wondering who painted that. And I saw the signature on the bottom. And then about maybe like 3 months after living here, I went into town and my sister and I saw this opening at this gift store where there were all these paintings on the wall. And I thought, oh, that's the painter of the psychedelic rhino. You can tell. And then I saw the signature and I could see that it's, was consistent. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then probably, I don't know, 6 months later, I went into that same place and two people turned around and they went, hello, Jessica. And I was like, are you talking to me? And so they said yes. They thought that I was this painter that they knew. And I'm like, who would that be? And so they said Jessica. And I don't know if she wants me to put the last name there, but
No, that's okay.
so I was like, that's weird because I assumed that George had met this person and had like a connection. And I always kind of wondered. And then I looked her up and I discovered that she was born in Northern Germany, like myself.
Oh,
And that, we do look a little bit alike. Well, I met her for the first time 2 nights ago. We met in Santa Barbara and we had
where I was raised.
Where you were raised, right?
Yeah.
So and where she lives. And so we sat down for, a little over an hour. And what we discovered that we had in common was bizarre. I mean, absolutely bizarre. We had, I think I made a list somewhere. Her mom comes from, I think one of her parents, I think it was her mom, comes from Northern Germany. And then the other parent comes from Thuringen, which is like a former East German state. And not as well known as other states in Germany. And so that was unusual. And then we sat down, we're both about 5'10", and she had been a model of, a successful model. I had been a model. I hated it. I was not a successful model. And at one point she looked at me and she's like, I feel like I'm looking at a part of myself. And I was like, this is so bizarre. The name of the father of our, her children, my child, is the same name. We both also studied graphic design. We both lived in New York City at one point. We just had so many like weird connections. We were just sitting there. People were like looking at us.
Are you related? Like genetically related?
I don't know. She actually mentioned that she just did her DNA because DNA. I had both of my parents' DNA done before they passed because I just felt like it was important to do. And like my mom's DNA goes very much up to like Norway and stuff, and the Frisian Islands. That's where my name comes from. And her DNA is like similar. And then the fact that the other part of her DNA is from Thuringen, I was just like, this is just so bizarre. So at some point, I'm sure we'll meet again and talk more because I'm sure more will come out. But that's just like one piece of synchronicity that's happened. And she said, she's a very serious painter. And she told me about her meeting with George and that she didn't really understand who he was. And I guess he was trying to figure out why this rhinoceros, like what sort of energy she was getting, like if it was sort of like an oracle, that if it had a certain message. And so she didn't, she was just sort of was painting something and she didn't really understand him. I don't think she couldn't figure out what he was wanting to, what information he was trying to get from her. So she kind of just was like, she made the transaction and moved on. And she said how ironic to see that my painting had this like life story of it, like went to George and then I inherited it. And then, my son has it now. My son has this really great art collection where he's collected, his father's business is that he has a warehouse and he moves people's art. So like people with huge collections, he moves their art in their houses and then holds warehouses the art that they don't want to hang on their walls. He warehouses them under like climate control and high security. And then if like that piece of art is going to go to a museum in New York, he creates it and he has like, that's like his business. So my son Anton knows quite a bit about art actually. And he started having this whole collection. And so he's got this big rhino over his bed. And I joked to the painter, I said, it's so funny because we joked that it's like this classic visual of like a drug dealer from the 1970s with like the big, massive African animal above his bed, like the image of virility. And it's hilarious. And so she was like, oh my God, I love knowing where that painting landed and that it landed, in a family that has like very strong art connections.
Yeah. You didn't want to keep it.
There's some things of George's that I wanted to keep here. And there were some things that I just felt overwhelmed by, and that painting was really big. And I probably could have put it in my bedroom, but it really has like this flourish of energy that pops out. And Anton loved it. And I was like, okay, so this is, and he's going to get everything of mine anyways. So it all worked out really great. And Anton has a lot of George's furniture. He has his glassware. It's all over. Am I sitting on? No, I'm not sitting on one of George's chairs, but this desk that the computer's on is George's. There's George's stuff all over,
everywhere.
But I did spread some of it around, and I feel like it fit better in Anton's place where he's got like a lot of art that's also like famous like taggers and stuff that do paintings, and it just fit the energy of his place a little bit more.
My son-in-law's an artist, and we have an ongoing battle because, and sorry if I offend anybody, personal opinion, I hate graffiti. I hate tagging. I think it's vandalism, and I don't care how elaborate the mural is that they paint.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. And he of course he's an artist and he considers it this great art, and so that's the only thing we ever argue about. And we argue about it all the time. It cracks me up. And speaking of synchronicity, how funny that you got in touch with me and you came and talked, and I discovered that you knew Denise. You went to Cal Arts. I mean, what?
I didn't go to Cal Arts. I just met her through a friend that was friends with Denise and her husband. Yeah. He was an editor, a film editor. And I went to their apartment, this is a long time ago. And I remember they played games all the time. We were always playing, I don't know if it was charades or card games or things like that. And I was like, oh, these people are so fun. And they were really like these minstrels where like he was always playing music and everybody sort of gathered around them. And at that time she was already doing psychic readings. And I got a reading from her a very long time ago. And I almost wonder if I could find it. But so that was really interesting. But I didn't really know her on a personal level. She probably doesn't even remember me. Yeah, how weird is that?
Yeah. So let's talk about. I have a question about, I think it was the second podcast you did. You were talking about the archeology, the experience of digging down into layers into somebody else's life, and how odd that felt. It's a very personal, kind of an intimate thing. So, what do you think people are going to find when you're gone? What kind
Oh
of
God,
archaeology are you going to leave behind?
I just got the chills when you said that. Um, you know, I literally have walked out my door at times and thought, what if I never come back? Like what will people, do I have dirty underwear on the floor? Hopefully not, hopefully I didn't
Well, you would
leave a huge mess in my
never.
kitchen. Yeah. Um, and I have thought about it, and it's a very intense question because it makes you think that you're gone and maybe somebody finds something. Okay, so oh my God, maybe I shouldn't mention this. I have things that I have books and albums that I didn't get myself that are here that, if somebody looked at them would be like, "Oh, she's pretty weird." And we might have to cut this out.
I can't edit, so be careful what you
Okay.
say. I
All
don't know
right.
how to edit, so.
So, there's certain things that you can control and certain things that you can't control.
Right.
But I definitely think of it, and I think of all the books here. I wonder if people would know that I inherited George's stuff. So part of that's him and part of it's me. Some of that stuff doesn't relate to me, but I've kept it,
Oh, you don't think so?
right?
I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I did consciously curate a lot of stuff, and I got, I sold probably at least 1,000 books, and gave away probably at least another 600 books. And I still have a lot of books here. Um, but yeah, I feel that in a weird way that this podcast is also something that I leave behind and tells this story so that if you did find yourself in this little, you know, in this little time machine here, that it would make sense. And
Do you
yeah,
have
I
something you
have,
wish that you hope that people find that, if like King
yeah.
Tut, what did he hope to leave as a legacy? I know that was involved in religion and coming, having everything you need to come back to life, but more than that, obviously that there was a certain amount of I'll just use the word ego, a desire to be remembered.
Right.
What would you
Yeah.
hope people would find to remember about you?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I'd really have to think about that. I mean, I have this like really weird wooden Viking that's next to my fireplace that's a sculpture. I didn't make it, but I was with a bunch of friends and we were traveling in the desert, and I saw it in the store, and I was actually really broke at the time, and I like I think I spent my last 250 bucks buying this thing, and it kind of looks like my dad's face. And I love that. I do have like a special feeling about that. But a lot of pictures, I'm looking at a picture of my mother on the wall right now. That same picture was laying on her gravestone at her funeral in Germany. Um, and um, it's probably really pictures. I have this beautiful picture on my desk of my son and I. And when he was a baby, I was a single mom from day one. And when he was a baby, as a Chris, people sometimes had these like official Christmas cards with all the family, like, and I always thought, oh, I don't have that. I don't have like, the husband's missing, the other kids are missing. It's just me and Anton. So as a joke, I used to jump into nativity scenes at churches and then have to take the picture, and that was my Christmas card. And
Did you
hold on
put
a
him in the
second, I
manger?
have
Did you
one
put
right
him in the
here.
manger?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I don't even know if you can see that. So here's
Hold it up
Anton
a
and
little bit.
I.
Come closer. Come way closer. Oh, I see. At least you didn't put him in the manger.
Right? So we're in the manger, like we're in like
That is
and like
hilarious.
to me that describes like my my interesting relationship with my son. And my parenting technique. It was a little rogue, I guess, in
Well,
some ways, because it was just him and I. And
I love the description that you were giving of the kind of photography, the family
Mhm.
photography that you see on people's walls. The Olin Mills, does that ring a bell? That's the company. And you'd see everybody in jeans and a white button-up shirt, sitting on
Yep,
each other's
yep.
backs or something. So all of my girls, at least once a year, they try to get together and go away together someplace and just spend the time for a long weekend as
Oh,
sisters. And they do
yeah.
fun stuff. Well, this year, we get this series of photos, digital photos. They decided for their fun thing, they went to one of those types of photography studios and they
Yeah.
brought
Oh my God, I love it.
outfits from the 90s,
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s, because that's their
Oh my
ages.
God.
And they
Yeah, yeah.
reenacted all the lame poses and,
Oh my
everybody
God.
looking up like they're having a vision, all five of them. It was
I love that.
hilarious.
That's
Hilarious.
great.
Yeah.
So wait,
Yeah.
you have 5 children?
I have five girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so
It's a
interesting.
lucky thing because I always really only wanted girls. Sorry, everybody. I have six brothers, and that cured me of
Wow.
that.
It,
Yeah.
like, skips a
Yeah.
generation, I guess, right? I
No,
wanted a
because I have five
girl.
sisters.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
12 of us. No, there's just
Of
fertility
course,
in the
you're
family.
Irish. You must be Catholic Irish.
Serious fertility is what that's all about. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always thought that I wanted a girl, and then when I had, obviously I had this boy, and it was just like the most perfect pairing.
Mhm.
Um, and some of the pictures I have, if you went through my photographs, here's a great example, is I have this picture and it looks like a murder scene. And it's a bathroom and there's blood everywhere. And then there's a bathtub and it looks like the bathtub's filled with blood. And that is, I accidentally gave birth to my son by myself in my bathroom. And there was my
And then
friend's
you
dog
filmed
was
it.
there. And it was bloody. And then when Anton was born, I had to get him to breathe. I had to go like this, and he went and like took his first breath in my arms. And then I crawled into the bathtub to keep us warm. And I knew somebody was going to come at some point because I could hear my phone ringing off the hook. Everyone was wondering where I was. So I knew people were looking for me. That was when we had, house
Yeah,
phones.
no cell phones,
And
right?
and so my sister developed those photos at this photo lab, and they thought it was the scene of a murder, and they wanted to call the police because they thought, right? So then the next day, we go in to pick up the photos that my sister took. And I even said, don't clean everything. I want to see that. I want to see what that experience was or photograph it or something. Like, don't just,
First baby book, right?
yeah, right. For his baby. Well, it is. But if people saw that photograph initially, they might be like, what was that, a murder scene? What was that?
You
And it
end
was
up on
a
Dateline.
birth scene. And when we went to pick up the photographs at the developer, the developer was like, we want to ask you about these. And I said, my son was born at home by accident, and I had him in the baby Bjorn already. And they were like, oh my God. And they were just so freaked out.
That's a great. I hope you have that picture in his baby book. That's a real
Yeah,
legacy.
right.
So
But
you
it tells
talked
you how
about.
people can experience, like, people can misinterpret. And that's often like my biggest fear is, misinterpreting something that I find here or whatever and taking it in a different direction. So we'll see how that goes.
I feel like that won't happen because I feel like you're in a big way being kind of gently guided. I think you're going to make the right associations, whether you
Yeah.
realize it or not. You will make the right associations. And
Thank you.
speaking of that kind of a journey, the books that you
Yeah.
talk about, it cracked me up because you started talking about the genres, you know, and his journey through all these metaphysical books and
Yes. Yeah.
philosophical books and religion.
Yeah.
And you named a lot of authors I was familiar with. Oh, you mentioned
Right.
earlier, you know, the floor plan of the city of Washington, D.C. is
Right.
Masonic, right? So 20 years ago, if you read about stuff like that, you were a conspiracy nut.
Right.
Now you're just politically attuned. You know, it's
Isn't
interesting.
that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kept thinking that, you know, I wondered if people perceive George as such. And now, I wouldn't be lying if I told you that, I'm saving toilet paper and water in my house because the future feels a little unpredictable or a lot unpredictable. And I do think probably people experienced him as a conspiracy theorist. And, you know, I was talking about the East Wing of the White House, has been torn down, as we know. And there, in one of the books that I was reading, they were talking about the touchstone, the cornerstone that was laid by George Washington.
Washington in his
I
Masonic apron.
Right. And so I don't know that was by the East Wing. I do know that it's never been found and that they have looked for it in the past. But that's so fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the book about the family, about, sort of this Christian group that has basically educated people to become future politicians and, court judges, et cetera, and that this is a cabal,
Yeah.
and that's a word I would not have used before. And now we see that, whether it's Epstein or political, there does seem to be this infrastructure that started long before we started talking about it.
Well, I cracked up when you started talking about the book. I have a copy of it somewhere. I went down to try to find it, and I've rearranged some stuff, and I couldn't find it. And then you mentioned Craig Unger. He's one of my favorite writers. I've covered this book,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's required on my channel to recommend him once a week. So this is this week's recommendation.
Oh,
American
wow.
Compromise. This is,
Nice.
the Russia thing.
Yeah.
All of it. And
Wow.
before it became a thing, he had investigated it and talked about it. Yeah, it's excellent. He wrote House of Trump, House of Putin.
It's not on my desk right now. It's in the so I made a little special closet that's like a hidden door for all of George's books. Make it add to the intrigue,
Yeah. You talked about, we already mentioned Naomi Wolf, but you talked about something that I found really significant. So you talked about Blackwater and Eric Prince. Eric Prince is Betsy DeVos's brother.
Yep.
And I did a video about him probably 2 or 3 years ago. Really, pardon the pun, a deep dive into Blackwater, which is Soldiers of Fortune. He goes to war zones and gets the ruthless and initiates them into his group.
Mercenary armies.
They're now in Haiti, torturing people in Haiti. So Betsy DeVos, whose father-in-law started Amway, one of the biggest scams in the world.
Wait, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, Mr. DeVos.
I didn't know. Oh my God. Okay.
He was a co-partner in starting Amway, and allegedly she started all these Christian homes for pregnant girls, and they would make sure that the babies got adopted into good Christian families. Yeah, great business. So when I did this video of Eric Prince, I had a very unusual experience here. This room lit up like fireworks. There were sparks and orbs, and every time I opened my mouth and said something about him, a little light, it was really dramatic.
Wow.
But I've watched about 1,000 videos, and I think that was one of them that's gone. But people did notice it. It wasn't me hallucinating. And I think that the purpose of that was, this is this bad dude. This is really evil. And
Oof.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's
And
dark. It's very dark. Yeah, I
and you
agree.
talked
I
about
totally
was
agree.
it Eleanor Pagel? Eleanor?
Elaine Pagel.
Elaine, I know, one of those
She's great.
derivatives. Yeah.
Yeah.
She wrote the Gnostic Gospels.
Yep.
Yeah. Now she didn't actually write the Gnostic Gospels. She
Yeah,
wrote the book, the
the
Gnostic
book, The
Gospels.
Gnostic
Yeah,
Gospel.
yeah.
Yes, correct.
She's wonderful. Really
Yeah,
an
she's
interesting
really
writer.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really interesting. Yeah, and the book that I have of hers, that George had, is Angels and Devils, or is
It's
Satan and
about
Angels? I
Satan.
forget. Satan,
The origins of Satan.
The Origins of Satan.
Yeah.
And that's so fascinating too, because depending on your time period of what you consider symbols of evil and symbols of innocence and um, godliness. And yeah, that book was really fascinating. And I'm trying to think, I have like so many books in my head. It's kind of like all the characters of all these, whether it's
Yeah, I can
Satan
relate.
or, that whole thing of, these, I keep thinking of like Bosch imagery,
Mhm.
where some of it looks like UFOs and some of it looks like things coming out of the sky. And it's all also
Religious
about your
apparitions.
context of the time that you live in and how you'll experience certain things that you might see and how you would interpret them,
Let me ask you, did you find any books by Jacques Vallée?
I would have to look
Pat-
again, but I don't
Passport to
think.
Magonia? Does that ring a bell?
No, I know who Jacques Vallée is.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think I do. There's one other library that I could look at where I had my the books I still couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with, and they might be there, but I don't think so. I think I would know if I did.
Yeah, because
Um,
there's just such a thread running through all of the stuff that you've mentioned. You talked about
yeah.
magic. I know we're all over the place here, but you talked about magic and how the juxtaposition in some people's mind of magic as evil and religion as good, that it's
Mhm.
in opposition to good. And really, magic was just ritualized pagan belief systems. It has nothing to do with really evil. And it's also
Mhm.
got nothing, well, of course, it's evolved that way, but it's not about tricks, pulling rabbits out of the hat. There's something much more metaphysical about it, the real magic. Um, you talked about occult information being hidden. And I love that because a lot of people think the word occult means evil, but it's not. It's from Latin. It means to be hidden.
Mhm.
And a lot of these things like magic rituals, that sort of thing that people fear, they only fear from lack of knowledge because it's been hidden, and it's been hidden to protect it.
Yeah, and I think it also intimidated a lot of formal religions, so they had a campaign against it. So
Well, it was in competition.
yeah, yeah.
If you could think,
And
and I do, if you think of institutionalized religions as businesses, then it gives a whole different light
yeah,
on the corporate nature of it and the capitalistic nature of it. And it's all about counting heads to get money in the bank. Yeah, really.
yeah, I mean, look, right now in the US, if you're a religion, you can buy all the real estate in the world. I mean, you can buy all the real estate in the United States, not pay taxes on it. It's a free for all. It's crazy. It's crazy the amount of property and money that a lot of religions are holding, yet now they can invest in politicians as well. I don't know how hidden that veil is at this point, but that's something that's surprising is legal in the United States.
Well, I told you about the book I'm working on, and I'll get into that in a few weeks, and it is revelatory in uncovering the manipulation and corruption that go hand in hand with government and religion, and not just any one particular, a number of
Yeah.
different ones. It's
Mhm.
stunning. The tax fraud, for example. I won't name
Oh, I can only
names, but
mention. Yeah.
oh, we're talking
Yeah.
70 billion plus dollars of tax fraud in one case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that would
So,
help us out a lot if, they would participate in taxes. That would be
yeah,
so, that could change the entire environment of the country.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that what's interesting, and I'm trying to explore this a little bit, and that is that, George studied so much metaphysical stuff and magic. And when I first came here, when I first saw this house, I went home, I meditated, and I saw this falcon flying over the property. And to this day, when I meditate, that falcon is a part of the meditation. And that started the day I saw this house. And to me, that is a weird kind of magic, because I feel that that was somehow brought to me, that I felt not lured, but guided
Mhm.
by this imagery. And that does feel very non-traditional, non-conformist, something I can't really explain, but I feel was a symbol that was sent to me. And, symbols are a large part of metaphysical
Mhm.
teachings and the occult, etc. And that really gels for me in a way I can't entirely explain how that happened. Is that sent from somebody in particular, or how exactly that happened? But it really did guide me to buying the property, because somebody else's offer was accepted, and I somehow knew through this symbol, the falcon, that I was going to get the place. And it kept coming to me in my dreams, my meditation, like just waited out. And then it let me know the day that their deal fell through. The people that whose offer was
Tried. Yeah.
accepted. And to me, that is sort of magical
Yeah.
and unexplainable.
Well,
Yeah.
I just looked it up while you were talking, because I knew there was something and I couldn't remember exactly. And you know how owls are a symbol of wisdom. They're these
Mhm.
archetypes, right? And they're ancient, and it's in our DNA. We carry this stuff around with us. So of course, it might not be in your socialized practice, your cultural
Yeah.
social practice, but at the
Mhm.
same time we carry it, right? And the falcon, just very briefly, and probably this is only a fragment of what it symbolizes vision, being shown something.
Yeah.
And that gave me chills. I just think that's fabulous. Yeah.
Can I tell you something else? Oh God, now I'm like the hair on the back of my head is just going.
I know.
"Rah!"
I know. I
Um,
think we hit on something.
yeah. So, in this next episode, I go into paranormal experiences that have been happening in the house, and they actually only usually happen when guests are here. It's like it wants a witness, which is very bizarre to me. And except with the instance that about, what was it, Mother's Day was 2 weeks ago, and my son was up here and he walked in the house and he was just like, "Woo." And I was like, "What's up?" And he said that he had just seen this huge rattlesnake in the carport. So we went out there and, we saw it there and we were both freaked out. Our adrenaline's just like freaking out. And it was like 4 feet long. And
Ew.
then, we got it out of there. I won't go into any detail. And then the next
Thank you.
day, ugh, the next day, I was alone. My son had gone back to LA, and I see this thing squiggling in the living room, and I'm like, "Oh, crap." And it's a snake. I don't know how it got in my house, because I always keep the doors closed here because, things can come in. And so I spent 45 minutes. It was a baby snake. It was like 8 inches long, and it was like skin colored with like a sheen, and then it had a absolutely black head. and I'd never seen anything like it. I didn't know if it
Ew.
yeah, and I didn't know if baby rattlesnakes, I don't know what they look like if they haven't developed their pattern yet. And so it took me about 45 minutes to, and then I kept walking away and then I got under the carpet. Oh, just thinking about it makes me want to puke. And and then finally I pushed it with this stick onto a towel, and then I grabbed the towel like with one of those hand things that I grabbed the grabber and that you see on late night TV that you can buy. And so I got the grabber to hold the towel, ran down the hill, and threw it over the hill.
You have to be
Then
really careful with baby snakes. If they're venomous, they're
I
more
know,
venomous than
I
the
know,
adults. Yeah.
I know. That's why I was so careful. So the next day, no, 2 days later, I'm walking to my greenhouse and I'm scanning the ground because I'm like 2 snakes in just a couple days. And it's spring. I mean, I'm in rattlesnake country. And so scanning the ground, and then I get to the greenhouse and I go to click open the door, and to the right of me, I see a snake uncoiling, and then I hear it,
Oh
and
my
it's like
God.
a 5-foot rattlesnake right right to the right of the door of my greenhouse. And so then I like back away because you don't want to show them a lot of movement. I back away slowly, then scream and run up the hill. And then I didn't go there. I didn't even walk there for like a week. And I thought, "Oh my god, like 3 rattlesnakes and like 3 snakes in like 5 days. Like, what's going on?" And I felt so unnerved that, like, I couldn't get any work done. I'm trying to get episode 5 out, and I just sort of felt like something's around the corner all the time. I couldn't relax. And, so sometimes if I have, like, writer's block or things like that, I'll take out a tarot deck and I'll pull out a card just to put me in a different mode. And, I also have George's, he had 2 animal oracle decks, and, I decided to pull one of those out, just get on a different mode. And so I shuffled it for, a few minutes, 1 card out, snake. And then I was just like, "Oh my god, this is just crazy," and I looked up what that card said, and it was talking of the snake more as in this deck as like a healing, there's aspects of you being a healer and about change. But when I looked up the bigger symbol of snakes, you know, look at biblical, is the snake was in the Garden of Eden. That snake
Well, you
was
know
to the
why
right
that
of my
is?
greenhouse.
But you know why? You know why the snake is in the Garden of Eden? It's the same reason that St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland. The snake and the dragon are related. They're symbols of the feminine goddess
Oh, oh
religion.
wow. Oh wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. And then afterwards I was like, "Oh my god, the snake, means, transition and change." And the fact I kept thinking of the Garden of Eden, and it's in front of my greenhouse, which is my garden. And I was like, "This is just so bizarre, how
Well, you know that
these symbols are coming
metaphor.
up in my life." Yeah.
Yeah, it's that metaphor of
Yeah.
Eve, the woman
Mhm.
with too much knowledge, and the snake is related to it's that goddess religion that was too much for them,
Yeah.
the patriarchy. Yeah.
How crazy is that? That sort of aligns with, what I'm doing in this story. And then, in just the past 3 weeks, the amount of stuff that's happened here as I've begun to open up that the treasure chest of unusual things that are happening here, suddenly it's just happening all the time. I had
Mhm.
a friend of mine was here. We were watching this great Jim Jarmusch film called, I think, Only Lovers Left Alive with Tilda
Mm,
Swinton.
mm,
Such a great film. And they're like vampires, basically.
mm,
So there's a point they're in Detroit and they're listening to music, and the all the electricity in the building goes out. And all of a sudden my TV just dies at that moment and like shows an error on the screen. And we just looked at each other like, oh, of course, this is, things just keep happening.
Like that in your house. Yeah. How
I
do you have a
had,
good pair of boots with a high ankle, like a high coverage?
I
I'm
do, but
serious.
I have more rubber boots, and you really need to get something specifically against rattlesnake bites because they
Yes.
can bite through most boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, my neighbor just got something special boots for that because if you're weed whacking and stuff, you got to be really
See, I'm
careful.
not
Oh
afraid
my
of
God.
snakes. I'm neutral on snakes. I don't care. But I don't like venom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. That's very
Oh,
scary. Yeah. So
I
so
had
let me ask you something.
sure.
You're getting ready to do the next couple of episodes, and you've segued into the
Mhm.
UFO, which of course it's inevitable, it really is inevitable. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you I think we've talked about this before.
Mhm.
Dr. Diane Pasulka, who
Yeah.
wrote American Cosmos. Okay, so that connection that she makes between um, the UFOs as a modern visionary experience, and that there's something going
Right.
on with humanity, that we're being conditioned, like Skinnerian conditioning.
Mhm.
Show us something weird that resonates in our time and place. So gods and goddesses from the sky if you're Sumerian, right? And you see this for a while, and this makes an impression on you. You never know when something is going to show itself, and
Right.
then it disappears. Then time goes by, and you're in Lourdes or Fatima, and you see Mary, and it's unexpected. The
Mhm.
apparitions are irregular, and then they're gone again. That's Skinnerian conditioning. And Jacques
What does
Vallée.
Skinnerian mean?
Well, it's when okay, B.F. Skinner was I think a psychologist,
Okay.
and the box and the dog. Okay, so Pasulka, her big thing is that UFOs are very possibly, because she's a professor of theology. Her,
Right.
that yeah, that UFOs are just the modern version of Marian apparitions or ships
Mhm.
in the sky. People literally saw ships in the sky, all of that in human history, and that they're trying very hard, because time has no meaning, so it's a long time, but it's not, they're trying hard to wake us up to our real purpose and place in the larger universe. And
Right.
they're having a hell of a time, because my theory is
So
that genetic
resistant.
we're no I don't think we have the brain power. I don't think we're wired well enough. Our genetics
Yeah.
just they tweaked us, but they didn't go far enough. And there's only so much we can
Yeah.
understand.
Mm.
It's hard, and that may be coming to a culmination now.
It's so interesting. So I just finished yesterday Chris Bledsoe's book,
Yeah.
UFO of God.
Yeah.
And I think on the last page, he says that, he saw these orbs in the sky with a friend and they were lighting up. And he said in the Bible, that would have been described as chariots of fire.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
he made that connection. And I think I agree with that. I think things that we've been seeing that are unexplainable, we've been having to categorize in a safer place in our mind. And if the Bible is your belief system, then you're gonna want to pull something from the Bible, from Mary. Chris Bledsoe is a religious man, he is a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
religious man. And for people that don't have that kind of religion, I never really grew up with a heavy religious background. I would say that I'm somewhat spiritual. So if I were to see something, I would have to come up with a different way to categorize it in my head. But I agree. I think that in each time frame, uh, people struggle to interpret what that means. And if that brings them out of you know, we're in a very 3-dimensional world. I don't always understand when people talk about 5D. Like, God forbid, Trump talks about his 3D or 5D chess game, but
Oh, oh yeah.
right. Um, but our world is, it feels like it is stretching right now. It feels like it's a lot less predictable than I remember when I was younger. And I feel that, the concept of UFOs is something that is getting tangled into our spirituality. And we don't know if it belongs there or if it doesn't belong there. And I'm kind of curious to see where this goes. Contact in the Desert starts tomorrow, I think, in Southern California. I had actually wanted to go this year, but I don't think I could go. And there's a lot of people there that are military whistleblowers, that are people that are serious documentarians and professors that want to talk about this subject no longer in a way that makes them sound like a conspiracy
Yeah, it's not
theorist.
derisory anymore. People are putting
Yeah.
their tin foil away. I'm so sick of that. Some of the most open-minded and well-informed people on all of these subjects are plasma physicists and engineers and mathematicians, experimental mathematicians, that are willing to entertain the notion that we don't know what we don't know, and
Right.
keep your mind open instead of deciding that what they decided about Copernicus was correct. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that is educated also in physics, etc., will say the world is so much more expansive and complicated than anybody could describe or understand. It's almost beyond our human comprehension. We're getting there slowly, and it makes sense that there's so much that we don't know. And that's the
Yeah.
exciting part,
Well, when
that
you
the world is a lot bigger than that.
put current events in that context, do you realize that life on planet Earth for humanity has always been cyclical, and we have these opportunities to grow and
Yeah.
develop and expand our consciousness, and then it all goes wrong, and we have to
Oh my God.
start
Yeah.
over again. And I think what you're feeling when you're
Mm.
talking about feeling things as less predictable, that's because you're
Yeah.
reaching the end of a cycle.
Yeah. I mean, clearly we're going through a major change, and a cycle is ending. And, whether that new cycle, how much it'll be influenced by AI, by um, political processes. I won't go into detail on that because I know we have to be careful
Yeah.
about how we talk about things.
Circumspect,
Mm.
yeah.
But yeah, we don't know what those influences will be, but yeah, I feel there's great change coming. And, you think about your children and what their life's going to be like when they're our age, how different it's going to be.
Well, I think about when I was a child and how different the world is today. And
Yeah.
that old. And I never worry about my children's future because I'm pretty sanguine about it. I believe that you come into the world when your soul needs to be here, and
Mhm.
you'll face what you're meant to face, and how you fare is largely free will, but at some point, you're kind of batted about by the fates, but ultimately
Yeah.
you'll be fine. Everybody will be fine. It's just the process of getting there. It can be very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that, it's not to be fighting again. I mean, I believe, oh, hello. Um, Not to be
He doesn't like what
fighting
you're
against
saying.
one's reality. Hello, George. Not to be fighting against somebody's reality, because I do believe you have to work within your reality and accept it to even if you want to overcome it, like, what's going on right now. Um, even voting, think we're all about to vote in California, and you can make a difference, hopefully, by doing things like voting and talking about it and talking to people about like, hey, why do you think that person's a great potential governor or lieutenant governor? Just keeping that in the conversation is also important, you know.
Well, I have to ask you this, and I am
So,
joking. Uh, you're not going to be voting for the mayor of Los Angeles, right? So
oh, you're going
Spencer
to talk about
Pratt's not
Spencer
getting your
Pratt.
vote.
You know, I used to live in LA, and I just the fact that he's a reality
I couldn't
TV
believe
personality
it.
again
Oh
is just so freaking bizarre.
my god!
All you have
I
to do is look at his face. You see, I saw a picture of his face, and his eyes look as vacant as a doll's. You know, his eyes just have like this complete vacancy to
I
them.
don't remember what it was that he was on television for, but I didn't watch a
Yeah,
lot of TV. I do
yeah.
remember he and his wife had something. And I remember that my impression was of two empty people, and then wrote it off. I just discovered the other day that he was running for office. I was like, well, I had to sit down. Are you
Did you
kidding?
look at his percentage points? Because
No.
he's he's a Republican. I think is he an independent or Republican? I forget. But yeah, I think I'm sure he's backed by the
MAGA.
Republicans
Yeah.
and by MAGA. And his numbers were shockingly high last time I looked. I couldn't believe it. And I don't know how that happened, but yeah, it's insanity. It's
Well,
absolutely
I made a
insanity.
prediction. Well, I don't do a lot of predictions,
Yeah,
but I
who are
feel
you gonna?
no, not about him, but a larger
Okay.
larger politics in California. I think California is going to go Republican.
Oh wow,
I kind of feel it. But it was, I mean, when I was
it
a
has
kid,
been. Yeah,
Reagan was the governor. I mean, he destroyed California as sort of a beta test for the rest of the country, right?
and Arnold
Uh,
Schwarzenegger as
oh,
well.
yeah, I forgot about him. I was gone by then.
Oh my God, just thinking about him makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. Yeah.
That's a
Oh,
lovely description.
oh my God. And so he's got this, my parents had very strong German accents, and he has a very Austrian accent. But it's just like, oh my God, he gives people with German, Austrian accents a bad name, like other famous people in history. So, yeah, that's just shocking. And I think people get too, just like people talk about the midterms and they're like, oh, it's going to be a blue wave. And it's like, don't get people too used to that concept where they get too relaxed. So this is not a time to be relaxed. This is a time to be so on point and to be very focused about how to move forward, because this is absolutely not a time to relax.
I'm so
I
happy to hear you say that because Nate and I have an ongoing battle about this. And he's uh, absolutely convinced there's going to be a blue wave. And my
Yeah.
my take
Wow.
on it is there may very well be, but it's meaningless. And so whether or not there's a
Oh,
blue
yeah.
wave, the damage is done. And I'm not sure people fully comprehend that the structural damage to the skeleton that upholds
Yeah.
democracy has been undermined. The foundation's gone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I am shocked by things I hear people say that I thought um they had sort of like reason within their brain, and they'll say things, and I'm just absolutely shocked at how some people perceive our current politics. And there's nothing, I'm not going to evangelize to people that are believers of Trump. I can't
Whatever.
even,
Yeah.
it's a
No.
waste of my precious breath.
You're not going to
But
be able to do anything about it. Yeah.
yeah, but you do see things like people's healthcare is a huge, um, it's so important that you have reasonable healthcare in this country, because so many people can be bankrupted by cancer, by asthma, whatever it is that's like a
That's
chronic
right.
condition, and or a huge operation. And this is a third world issue being dealt with by a
It's
supposedly first
insanity.
world country, and it's bizarre. It's
My
absolutely bizarre.
husband's best friend had Hodgkin's, and he
Oh, wow.
battled it for 25 years. And he went bankrupt 3 times because of it, working full time the whole entire time, going through treatments. He was a journalist, and
Oh,
three
wow.
times bankrupted his family. Yeah, it's
And
terrible.
just think, like, if you also realize that stress can really affect your body. If you'd imagine, I can't even imagine having cancer and then worrying about my bills and paying my bills and my family on top of that, like what that would do to like how that would crash my health even more. Oh my gosh, that's awful. But yeah, I mean, I think uh, maybe the gas prices, maybe healthcare, maybe, some of these issues will bring people to
Food,
the light. I
food.
think the fact that this whole fund, the 1777
Oh my
1.776
God.
fund that Trump has pissed a lot of people off, because when you see that they're all flourishing with so much money, you see all of the number of investments that he's made and stock trades he's made since he's been in office, and the amount of money he's made. And meanwhile, everyone's struggling to buy food, buy gas, pay for their
Well, you
health
heard what he
care.
said. He just think about the
He
economic
said he didn't care. Yeah,
implications on. Yeah.
I know. I know. Yeah, just so bizarre. So are you making any predictions on Trump's health, or are you leaving that alone?
I don't do that, but I'll say this: it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's not going to
right. You
change
said
the
that early
political
on. Yeah,
landscape. It'll
right,
switch to a different set of main players. But the damage
right,
is done. The same forces driving things are going to exist. He doesn't embody
right.
the only source of all of this. Definitely a malignant narcissist. Definitely, it's my
Yeah,
official prognosis. Definitely somebody who is unpredictable and has the power to carry out his unpredictability. We won't have that particular source of
right.
stress, but somebody else will step into the void.
Yeah, and do
Authoritarianism
other things.
abhors a
Yeah,
void,
yeah. Oh
and
my
we're going in the
gosh.
wrong direction.
Wow. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
It is crazy, and what it is really to me, I feel like I'm getting older ish, and it's
Me
not
too.
affecting me. I don't look at my long span of a future and think the things I might have been able to do. I'm in a different position, but I feel very sorry for this country. I'm very sad for this country. We chose to come here because of everything that it was, and I
Yeah,
chose to become a citizen proudly. I studied for that stupid citizenship test like I was getting a PhD. I'm not kidding you. And I feel like what what a tragedy, because there was originally great intent. Unfortunately, they started out on the wrong foot, because you were talking about white male property owners who owned slaves, owned
yeah,
people. Come
yeah,
on, you know, and then thought what they did to the natives didn't count. So we started out morally on the wrong foot. And,
yeah,
the wages of sin, it always comes back. Always, always. We have to work out that karma. Mary Trump wrote a really good book about that. I always forget the
mm,
name of it. It starts with an R. Not retribution, not reconciliation, but that in that same, not reconstruction,
yeah.
but that making
Another
atonement.
R word like that.
Yeah, another
Okay.
R word. Making
Okay.
atonement for the sins that, as a collective, we've created. We want to call ourselves Americans. We want to call ourselves part of a
Yeah,
democracy. We
yeah,
have to own the harm that our
yeah.
institutions we identify with, the harm they've done.
Well, it's so amazing because the Pope is attempting to do that, to sort of restructure the base of the Catholic Church, because probably knowing that religions are kind of splitting right now, like from Christianity and Catholicism. And, some religions may not make it through this test that we're going through. If things get really bad, those religions will be associated with it, in my opinion. And I think that the Pope is really trying to, in a way, reform Catholicism so that it has legs to survive what's to
Well,
come.
for a couple of years, I've had this gut, feeling,
Yeah.
and have predicted this. Oh, look at that. Somebody's agreeing
I know,
with
but
me.
it was trying to
Yeah.
focus on my cup.
over and over again, I've predicted this with a lot of pushback. People don't want to hear it. I
Mhm.
believe there's going to be a schism in the Catholic Church, and it's going to be driven by the MAGA American Church. There are bishops that are more loyal to MAGA, more loyal to Opus Dei, which is kind of
Yeah. Wow.
the Catholic version of MAGA, than they are to
Wow.
the
Yeah.
Vatican. And that's neither here nor there to me. I'm not a member. I don't profess
Right.
anything, but observing it as somebody who knows a little bit about the background, I feel like there's going to be a schism. And somebody said to me, well, how can that happen? That's not going to happen if politics dividing the church. I said, excuse me, the Episcopalian Church, Henry VIII? I mean, have you
Yeah.
not heard of that?
Look at
Of course
history, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me at all, because the conservative, and I'm using that term inaccurately, it's right wing, it's a fascist religion.
Right. Right.
And that, yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Just crazy.
And it's remarkable that they chose an American to be Pope. Somebody
Right?
wants to take credit for it. Oh, yeah, if it weren't for me, they would never have chosen an American. There's an element of truth to that, I think. Not the way he thinks, but I
Yeah.
think they realized we've got this wild card on our hands, this a runaway train on our hands. And maybe if we get somebody to be Pope who maybe understands a little bit about what the heck is going on over there, I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
might have played a part.
Oh, I think it was incredibly strategic. I mean, to have an American Pope and to have him from like literally the middle America,
Middle America, but a citizen
center.
of Peru.
Oh, right, right. Oh,
You
that's
know,
right. I
I think
forgot.
that's a significant part, is his
Oh,
association
yes.
with
Yeah.
Hispanic populations of the world. Yeah, the man speaks 5 languages.
Wow. Well, so does Melania, doesn't she?
Do you know that story? Have you heard that story?
I don't know. I just know that she has
Oh,
she got a
a
genius visa or
a
genius,
genius
right? Yep.
visa.
And
Yeah,
she speaks how many languages? And
she was
because
at a
I could have
party.
gone for the genius visa as well had I
Yeah,
known,
I
when
know,
I was
I
going
know.
for my citizenship. I would have totally done
She was
that.
at some diplomatic gathering full of people from all over the world, and this was in mainstream news, and I don't know when this
Yeah.
happened, but
Uh-huh.
so she's wandering around being first lady, and one of the diplomats came up to her, having heard she spoke 5 languages, one of them his language, and said something to her, like a full sentence in that language, and she didn't have a clue. And then it happened more than once, and people quickly discovered, well, I speak 5 languages in that case. Hola,
Yeah.
ciao. That's
If you
about
can
it.
order coffee in 5 different countries, that means you
I
speak
could
5
ask where the
languages.
bathroom is. Let's get our priorities in the right
Oh my
place.
god.
Yeah,
Can I just tell you something funny?
Sure.
I have a robo vacuum because I
Mhm.
live in the country. There's dirt everywhere, and I have a
Oh yeah.
dog. I have a dog the size of a pony that drools and releases hair every
Ew.
5 seconds. So, I got a robo vac and I named it Melania. She cleans up after me.
That's so bad.
It's just too much fun, right?
I love it. Well, this has been. I am really looking forward
Oh,
to the UFO episodes. The book
oh my
episodes were
God.
like, this is hilarious, because I can identify it, not because it was funny, but because there was so much identification with it. So I'm dying to hear what you come up with, and then you'll come back when you're done with the UFO episodes.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I have two paranormal at least. And then I have another like two kind of wild card episodes that I'm not going to talk about yet, but we'll see what happens. And then I'll go into paranormal. I've already done some interviews for paranormal. I'm very excited about them. Oh wait, let me show you something. This is what I have fun with while I'm by myself. I made drink coasters that have
To sell. That's wonderful. I wonder what
so
George thinks of that.
when I go somewhere and I'm like, oh, you should put a coaster under that drink. And then they're like, what is that?
More useful than a business card. That's
I know,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. And there's there are two UFOs in that imagery as well as falcons.
Okay. Yeah. I thought those were all
And
birds. I see it.
yeah. And yeah, the UFO thing, I actually already interviewed the editor of the Ojai Valley News, who is like a specialist on UFOs and also on the UFO phenomena in Ventura County, where Ventura County supposedly has more sightings than I think anywhere in the country. And I don't know if it's even in the world. And that's because it includes UF, USOs, which are unidentified
Yeah.
submerged objects.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of activity on the water.
Yeah.
And so I think, and as a, oh, there's my cuckoo clock going. That's how I end every episode. The windows in this house are all from the original skunk
Skunk works.
work.
Yeah. I
And
cracked it
that's
up.
like a whole nother thing. It's like he had all these UFO books, and then I have these like skunk work windows. It just feels like I have a lot more layers to pull back, and I'm excited about it.
Well,
So,
there's an incredible, for me, there's an incredible synchronicity in every topic you touch on. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that, talked about
I
that.
love
That
it.
that resonates. You're making the same connections. Sounds like George made the same connections. I think it's an inevitable path. Once you start getting all
Mhm.
paranoid 3 decades ago about the Masonic rituals, the
Right,
next thing you
right,
know, you're reading plasma physics books about, and it's all the same. You mentioned Stefan Schwartz,
right.
the remote viewer, right?
Yes, yes. And there's oh my God, I'd really love to learn remote viewing actually. Now that I've read a lot about it and you can see, like there's the Monroe Institute. Have you heard about that place? And I think it's in the South somewhere on the East Coast. Monroe Institute basically teaches people and works with people that have had experiences or experiencers, and also teaches them like remote viewing and all sorts of like interesting metaphysical. I don't know if you'd call remote viewing metaphysical, but that's a very interesting place to look up. And then there's also websites now where you can learn more about remote viewing, and that kind of opens a lens, I think, in your head where if you feel like you can do that, it's really about clearing your brain, just like meditation clears your brain so that you can accept imagery and you can accept um, being guided to look at certain things once your brain is completely cleared of associations and visuals and stuff like
Well,
that.
you're tuning in. Remote viewing itself. I'll just tell you what little I know about it. It's
Mhm.
hard work.
Yeah.
And it's very codified. It's not like, okay, everybody, I'm going to remote view. Watch me close
Right.
my eyes and remote view. No, there's a whole scientific process. It's very structured in the
Yep.
scientific technique. And
Yeah.
it's not just a fun thing you do at the spur of the moment. You have there's a process. I've had arguments, not arguments. I don't know how I would describe them. Conversations with Stefan
Yeah.
Schwartz about
Mhm.
remote viewing, because I will say things like, yeah, you just sort of send your energy into, he says, no, 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 no. Time and space have no meaning. And he talks
Right.
about it more as the information in the field. But the point would be that physics and metaphysics are intersecting. Finally, we're making that. They used to
Right.
intersect. It was called astrology and alchemy, and
Mhm.
and now we're getting
Yeah.
back to where our roots really.
Wow.
And who was it? Edgar Casey. He's the country's #1 Edgar Casey expert. He lived there for 5 years. And then, also remote viewing. There's a connection in all this stuff.
Did you mention a book by Stefan Schwartz, I think in one of your episodes, where it mentions archeology?
Yeah, the Alexandria Project.
Right. When you talked about that book, I was so fascinated by
Me
that, and I have
too.
to get that book. I absolutely have to get that book. I wrote it down and I never got it, but I will.
I'd send
Because
it to
that
you, except
sounds
I
so
don't want to. I
amazing.
don't want to part with it.
Yeah, don't let that's fine. I can get it. Yes. To
What a
me, that's so
remarkable
interesting.
story, huh? Remarkable
Mhm,
story. I mean, that
mhm.
is solid proof that there's something to what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. There's a woman that was one of the people that consulted on oh gosh, what is it called? The telepathy tapes. Have you listened
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
at all?
yeah.
Okay.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
And there's a woman that was a consultant. She's like a professor. She's associated with a number of institutes. I can't remember her name, but she has a book out fairly recently, also about remote viewing. And she has a website, and she also kind of goes into just practicing the codes and symbols first, so that your mind just kind of will come up with them without any associations. And you'll get the symbol of water, and you'll write it over and over and over again on pages and pages and pages. So your body will connect them
It becomes
with an
muscle memory.
image.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a muscle memory.
I don't
And
have the
I
patience
tried
for
to do
that.
that, but I wasn't very successful. And I didn't really spend a lot of time on it. I kind of was just like a Sunday afternoon, and I'm like,
Sounds
oh,
like
it's all right.
practicing the piano. I'd rather play something complicated and poorly than actually practice.
Yeah,
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 that's
exactly.
terrible, lazy. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, isn't it interesting though, if you think about the course of our conversation, the course of the books that you found, it meanders through the most disparate but connected
Yeah.
topics. It's interesting to me. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
there's
and
more
it's
to
getting more
come.
and more so. And thank you so much for having me on, and for discussing, all these for when I talk to you, you actually know so much of what I'm discussing, more so than anybody I know, which is
Really?
fantastic, because we get to have these very interactive conversations, and you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about George's library, or also that connection. Like, not everyone makes that connection to UFOs as well,
Oh,
you
to me,
know?
it's of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
is the of course. But yeah, and even like when you were talking about Skinwalkers of the Pentagon, I'm like, "Oh my God, she read that book. I've just read that like 2 weeks
Well,
ago."
the right
And
thing to say is she read that book finally, because
yeah,
I've been
yeah,
resisting it for a long time. And once
yeah,
I read it, I knew why I was resisting it. It's a little too real.
yeah,
Does that
yeah,
make sense? Yeah.
yeah.
There's nothing
Um,
gory in it. Anyone who's interested in reading it, there's nothing gory or graphic in it. But
yeah, but
some of the
it's
paranormal stuff is really scary, but not in a not in an Amityville horror way. It's scary in a I can't
Like,
explain
how
what's
is that
going on.
possible? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Mhm,
the woman
mhm.
who worked in the cubicle next to one of the scientists who was on the ranch. She had a brother in another state, and he started getting, and he knew nothing about what. I mean, please, that's
Oh
too
my God.
much. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that freaks me out.
I feel like I'm having this weird experience now where everything's beginning to elevate here, and it's not scary, but it's like, wow, what's informing that energy? Is it like momentum? Is it, but how does that happen? And not that I think that that's just going to go crazy, but I'm surprised that people that come here are having experiences, and then I'm like, well, did you have experiences after? And they're like, yeah, that was when it started there, you know?
Well, for yourself, and I'm probably not saying anything you don't already know, but
Mhm.
you just protect yourself coming from light and love with, and that sounds corny, but you
Yeah.
access that spark of the divine and
Mhm.
use it as a protection. You'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I mean, I honestly, I don't feel worried. I'm just very curious, and I agree. It's like I feel like I have good intentions, and that yeah, to come from a place of like love and caring and empathy, I
Right.
feel it's good.
Yeah,
So
and I think you were led to this. That
I
this didn't
agree.
happen by accident.
I
And
totally agree.
there's a purpose to it. So it's our job to figure out what message is trying to be expressed to us, right? So we need to think
Yep.
about that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Now I got
absolutely.
feels again. Stop it. Okay, so thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank
I'm
you
so
so much, Helen. It
grateful.
was so great to talk to you.
It was
And
really, really fun.
yeah, it was really fun.
Hang
And
on a second. I'll
yeah.
say goodbye to everybody.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Listen to Micah's podcast. I'm curious about George, right? Did I get that right? And,
Yep.
podcasts are everywhere. They're easy to find. So, and it's really fun to listen to. So, slongafoil, everybody. And thank you, Micah.
Oh, thank you.